My name is Joseph Bigelow, and I am the town father. I came here in 1850 looking for a business enterprise. It was then called Scugog Village. It was later changed to Port Perry in honor of the man who first settled here, Peter Perry. But today we're going to mark a tragic event. And that is the 130th anniversary of our town fire, a devastating event that almost destroyed the morale of the settlement. That is July of 1884. But we're moving too far forward here. Let's back up. I came here in 1850, became the town's first postmaster in 1852, opened the first bank, and started to establish the mills here on the waterfront. That's my background. We're now going to move forward to the present.
A penny for your thoughts, sir.
I was just thinking about this elevator, Curry's elevator. The only building to survive the fire of 1884. And you are?
I am the mayor of Scugog Township. And you, sir?
I am Joseph Bigelow, the first mayor of this town.
Well, a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yes. Can you tell me about, that was 130 years ago.
130 years ago.
What would it have been like then?
Well, the basic structure is still there. There have been a lot of additions put on since that time, but the basic structure is still there. And that was Mr. Curry's elevator, built in 1872.
Wow, that's impressive. You know, many things in our township have stayed the same.
Yes.
But many things have changed over time of 130 years.
Indeed, indeed.
There's a richness to many of our residents that have that deep desire to preserve our history and heritage.
Well, that's exactly what happened in the fire. I'm going to point to this stuff up here because it's amazing.
And here's a familiar face.
Mr. William Brock, sir, how are you today?
Very well, Mr. Bigelow, very well indeed, sir. And how are you?
I am well. Now, how is business going?
Well, as a matter of fact, we have finalized our plans and we intend to begin building right across the street in just a matter of weeks.
Well done. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. And who's this gentleman?
This is the present-day mayor of 2014, Mayor Chuck Mercier.
Well, Mr. Mercier, what a pleasure indeed.
It is an honor, Mr. Brock. I'm so pleased to be here with you, and I'm so impressed with your accomplishments after the fire to reestablish yourself, which led us to the future. And I'd like to welcome the character of today's modern times that was carried over from generation, Marina and Julie.
My great-great-granddaughter.
Yes, absolutely.
We were just discussing our plans that we had to commence building right across the street.
Well, great-great-grandfather, since you actually built across the street, you eventually moved over to this side, to the Ross block, and took over these two buildings, the men's side and our women's store over there. Subsequent generations bought the next two, so we now have a block of 4 storefronts in this area. The business prospered. It went through, if you can imagine, 2 world wars. It survived the Great Depression, and then subsequent to that, a few minor recessions, but here we are still today, prospering in 2014. We have many of the features, the architectural features that you originally had here in the 1900s when you came across. We have a lot of the glass in the top. We also have the F.W. Brock Son and Son sign, which is actually one of your descendants who took over the store.
Well, can I suggest that we move on and have a look at a little bit more of the town? And thank you so much, ladies, for filling us in on the background and the historical heritage of the Brock family and all it has contributed to Port Perry.
It's lovely to see
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Here we're moving a little bit further.
Mr. Bigelow, it must have been just such a terrible disaster the night of that fire. We've read about it in history books, and we often talk about it through our historical and heritage societies. Can you tell me a personal insight of what you saw that day?
I'd be happy to. The fire actually started in the stable behind here. Now this building, of course, wasn't in existence at the time. As you are probably aware, it was built in 1914. But in 1884, there was a hotel here owned by Mr. Sinclair, and he rented out the hotel and bar to a Mr. McQuay, who ran the bar and the stables behind. And on the evening of July the 4th, 1884, Mr. McQuay's job was to go and check on the stables to make sure that the blacksmith shop was properly subdued and there was no sparks left in there. And obviously he didn't do a good job, because by midnight the fire had caught in the stables, destroyed the stables, and was already encroaching on the hotel at the front. And before you know it, it had spread both east and west, and then across the road, so that our entire town was destroyed, as you well know. This spot where the fire started had a dark cloud hanging it over for decades. Nobody wanted to buy the land, so they set up a huge 12-foot fence around the property, and it remained that way for over 20 years, until somebody convinced the government to buy it. And the government indeed bought it in 1912 and began construction of this post office.
You know, even though the fire was devastating, you know, as we talked about, the people gave us strength. The construction of new techniques and using bricks, you know, kept this town right to our modern time today, yes, where people embrace our history and our heritage in their character.
Yeah. You might be interested in knowing, Mr. Mayor, that back in 1884, at the time of the fire, all the town records were destroyed by fire. And your counterparts back in August of 1884 had to repass all the bylaws that were in existence, but one new bylaw was instituted, and that is that no more wooden buildings were allowed on Queen Street. Everything had to be built out of brick.
Well, that's a brilliant political decision to preserve the town, and it's carried on for the next 130 years.
This is a symbol of the recovery of this town. You've commented several times on how the townsfolk were resilient. They all pulled together, and the foundation of the church was laid a year after the fire and then dedicated in 1886. Now, Mr. Mayor, this is my building. When I was elected in 1872, I said that this town has to have a town hall that represents the vibrance of this community. So in 1873, this was the building we erected, the Town Hall of 1873. And unfortunately, the two lower entrances that you see there today, this is where we kept the fire appliances for the fire of 1884, and unfortunately, they were totally ineffective.
Well, that was a terrible outcome, but congratulations, remarkable building. We carry on, has been restored. It's one of our premium theaters in town, you know, supporting the arts. But that fire, even how devastating it was to us, it tempered our steel, created character that we continued building, and I hope you're impressed with what you see today, and we pledge to continue on in those efforts.
It's been a pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations on what you're doing with the town today. Yes.